Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Is it morning for you now? Hello. My name is Keenan.
Hi, Keenan.
Hello.
I'm Kurt.
I hardly recognized you because you had a haircut since I've seen you last.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's summertime. I like to shed my skin in the summer.
Why don't you shave it all then?
I don't know. I really don't know.
So you've been sleeping until now?
I've slept all day. Yeah, I was up very late last night with my friend Roddy Bottom from Faith No More. He was showing me some new keyboard maneuvers.
Rumor in Europe that Kurt from Nirvana is dead.
Yep. Again. Dead, pregnant, on heroin. I'm a hermaphrodite as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the American SpyFox back with Nirvana number 6. If this is your first video, if this is your introduction into the series, I do encourage you to at least watch number 5. Number 5 and 6 do coincide with each other. A quick recap, we basically went over Cali, Dewitt, Jessica Hopper, and as one of my viewers pointed out, Luna says, wow, back then they'd have considered themselves lucky to be given attention by Courtney Love. These days it's called grooming. And you are exactly right, Luna. That is precisely what I was going for. Courtney Love reminds me of the character V. Any of you ever watch Orange is the New Black, like the first couple seasons before it got crappy? There's a character named V who finds orphan children, street kids, and she gives them that motherly love they've always been missing, turns them into dope dealers. Courtney Love is the 1980s, 90s version of V. You hit the nail on the head. She groomed Jessica Hopper and Cali DeWitt, along with a few other people we are going to be talking about in this series and in this video. Welcome to Exhibit B. But first, let me give a very special thank you to a fellow YouTuber by the name of Scott on Tape. If you guys have never heard of Scott on Tape, check out his channel. There's going to be a link below. Scott and I have talked over the last couple days, and very nice, polite Canadian YouTuber. He's allowed me to use a few seconds of footage from one of his videos on the last days of Kurt Cobain, which we will see later in the video. Scott, thank you so much, man, for letting me use that. I really appreciate it. As well, Andres Velez from Medellin, Colombia, watching all the way from Colombia, man. Thanks for checking out the channel. Now, there's a lot of different spottings of Kurt throughout Seattle, but there are only a couple that were confirmed. I'm only going to talk about the confirmed ones. If you'd like to check out a video that goes and shows you all the different places that Kurt was supposedly spotted, Scott on Tape has a video of every place that people are pretty sure he was, and it's a good video. If you've never seen those spots, click that link below and it'll take you right to Scott's video. One point I'd like to drive home that I was unable to drive home in number 5 is Courtney met Cali DeWitt before she even met Kurt Cobain. These young kids came as a package deal with Courtney Love. They're living in the Lake Washington home because Courtney wants them there, not because Kurt wants them there. And I believe that when Kurt comes home and makes it a point to go in their bedroom, the guest bedroom at 6 a.m. while they're still sleeping, to say, hey, I'm home, I left Exodus, tell Courtney I'm fine. Hopper says, no, you gotta call Courtney. They attempt to call Courtney. Courtney has decided to tell the hotel she's not accepting phone calls for whatever reason. So what does that tell us? Courtney goes on to tell the media that Kurt Cobain escaped Exodus, her words, not mine, and he was never heard from again until he committed suicide and was found dead. But if you watch number 5, you learn that that's not true. Kurt went home, woke up these people that he knows are Courtney's lackeys, Courtney's assistants, whatever you want to call them, they're loyal to this woman he wants to divorce. So in my opinion, Kurt made it a point to walk in their room at 6 a.m. and wake them up and say, I'm home, I'm fine, knowing that they're going to tell Courtney, and that gets Courtney off his back. So one thing I want people to ask themselves after they watch this video is, do I think of Kurt Cobain's last week wrong? Was he missing? In Kurt Cobain's mind, was he missing? Or did he let people know he was alive and well and then retreated into the Aurora Strip to feed his addiction? as he had done several times before. They treat it as if Kurt had never taken off before, had never went days staying in a seedy motel doing heroin. These are things he did over the last few months of his life several times over. He didn't drive this particular day on April 2nd because Courtney had slashed the tires to his old Plymouth to Aurora, get a cheap motel, and retreat for days or weeks. These are things he had done before. It's no coincidence that he's spotted in this area this week. He's already checked in with Courtney's assistants. He takes off to do what he wants to do. After all, it's America, it's a free country, and he's getting a divorce, okay? He doesn't look at himself as loyal to Courtney anymore. He's an independent man doing his own thing. Have any of you out there ever tried to break up with somebody and you know that it's done, but they don't know that it's done? They just can't accept it.
He got real depressed, and he wrote basically a suicide note. There's no real other way. He claims he was leaving me.
Do you still have all the notes, the note from Rome and the original note here?
Yeah, Detective Cameron gave me back the note from Rome, and he said, I would destroy this if I were you. It's not going to do you any good.
Why would somebody tell you to get rid of that?
Because it wasn't really nice. They talked about getting a divorce.
I hate to skip ahead. This is after Kurt's death. I want to stay in chronological order of his last days, but after Kurt dies, Courtney begins telling people that in fact Rome was not an accidental overdose. It was in fact his first suicide attempt, and that he had left her a suicide note, but she was told to keep quiet about it. That's why she never mentioned it to anybody prior to his death. And conveniently, Detective Cameron, who I want you guys to remember because he's going to be a part of Exhibit B, tells her to destroy the note. Now there's no comparison. They could have compared handwriting to each note, the one from April 8th, the one from Rome, to see if they matched, right? More analysis. But conveniently, Detective Cameron told Courtney Love to destroy it. Because she destroyed the note, it's just her word against a dead guy's who can no longer speak. In the same conversation, she admits that Kurt told her it was a divorce note, a Dear John letter, I'm leaving you, but in her mind says, but I know better, it was a suicide note. It wasn't a divorce letter, it was a suicide note. This is a woman who cannot accept the fact that her husband wants to leave her. We've all had that person we dated who just couldn't accept the fact that we were leaving them. I would bet at least 90% of you out there have had that one partner who was crazy. This, ladies and gentlemen, is an unstable woman. I'm not leaving the world, I'm leaving you. So we absolutely know for sure that after checking in with Cali, Dewitt, and Jessica Hopper at about 6 a.m. on April 2nd, a cab company drops him off at 145th and Aurora on the Aurora Strip. We know this for sure because this particular cab company kept a meticulous log.
At 8:30 a.m., the car dropped him off at the Crest Motel trailer park on 145th and Aurora Avenue.
In case you don't know what the Aurora Strip is in Seattle, it's a 20-mile long strip of nothing but
hookers and junkies and, you know, people turning tricks to get dope, and it's like 20 miles long, and it remains seedy all the way.
It's where people go to get lost. It's the seedy underbelly of Seattle, and this is not the first time Kurt Cobain was known to go there and disappear for a few days. He'd done it before. Matter of fact, there's a now infamous motel, the Polo Motel, where he frequented on Aurora Avenue, not far from the Crest Motel trailer park, and he loved to stay in room 226.
Kurt was often seen at the Crest trailer park, as well as the Close Inn, but his favorite place on Aurora Avenue was the Polo.
Oh, the old Marco Polo. I had a friend of mine staying at a hotel there who was strung out, and he was wanted for a murder warrant. His girlfriend got murdered. He didn't do it. They thought he did it, and he had stayed. I think it was at the Marco Polo when she brought that up. So that was the
place to go on Aurora?
I guess it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
I mean, Kurt apparently even had a favorite room, 226.
Wasn't that a GBA song? Drugs Party in 226? I think it's from 226. Drugs Party in 226. That's probably why.
We time sleeping on that train. A couple of hours, we all again. I couldn't
And you like, we want you. We had a tourist party.
You'll have to excuse Duff. He is a man who drank until his pancreas blew up. He was close. However, 226 did not face the main road. There were very few windows. It was sort of in the back, secluded. Kurt stayed in that room so often that the employees at the Marco Polo knew exactly what room he wanted when he came there.
So this is Kurt's room, huh?
Yeah. This was the hangout.
This is where he was one of the last places he was seen.
Yeah.
It's a great little room.
It was quieter, it was more out of the way.
Yeah, kind of situated off to the back here.
He could have whoever coming and going. I think he did it to escape, but of course there was a certain environment on Aurora here, which was the Wild West.
Yeah,
I've
read extensively.
Here. Yeah.
Really cool. Thank you so much for letting me see this.
Yeah, but I can tell you that maybe except for the carpet, it mostly has stayed the same. All of these, the only thing that may be missing at this point is this was one of those little wooden folding things.
So you could privacy barrier. Yeah.
But you can see he or whoever stays in here, it's out of the traffic, it's out of the way. There are no windows to the outside traffic area.
So here I am in room 226 at the Marco Polo, where Kurt Cobain liked to stay.
So this wasn't weird for him to disappear these few days, okay? Couple that with the fact that he told the people staying at his house he was back in Seattle. We all believe he was missing the last week because Courtney Love told the media that, and the media conditioned us to think about it that way. And thank you again, Scott on Tape, for giving us all a peek into the last few days of Kurt's life and where he was staying that last week, early in April. You guys go check out Scott's channel. He's a really cool guy and he goes to a lot of really neat places. Following Kurt around Seattle the next day, April 3rd, this is the same day that Courtney Love meets with Tom Grant, private investigator Tom Grant, but we're following Kurt Cobain. It's the second to last day to his life, and he's spotted outside Jack in the Box in Seattle's Capitol Hill. Now, this is no surprise to me, and he's spotted by fans, passerbys. There's no question that he was there. Not only did Kurt like to eat at Jack in the Box, his drug dealer Caitlin Moore was right around the corner, and Chris Novoselic in an interview actually talks about trying to have a one-on-one with Kurt on March 23rd, just a couple weeks earlier, in which Kurt asked him to come over, pick him up, and take him to Jack in the Box. The reason why Kurt couldn't drive himself is, like I said before, Courtney had slashed the tires to his Volvo and his Plymouth. Kurt didn't drive fancy cars. He drove old, dirty, grungy cars, I guess you would say. So Chris is trying to have this conversation with Kurt on the drive to get some Jack in the Box. And Kurt says, well, I don't want to go to Jack in the Box in University District. I want to go to Jack in the Box in Capitol Hill. Jack in the Box in University District was closest, but Kurt, his excuse was the burgers at the one in Capitol Hill are less greasy. Chris goes on to tell us that Kurt, in fact, had called his drug dealer, told her to meet him outside Jack in the Box at Capitol Hill, and he used Chris for a ride. They subsequently got into an argument. Novoselic was mad that his friend was continuing to use. He wanted to see Kurt clean, and Kurt took off. So the fact that passerbys and fans spotted Kurt outside Jack in the Box in Capitol Hill tells us that he more than likely hooked up with Caitlin Moore that day. While Courtney Love is in Los Angeles telling Tom Grant that no one has seen Kurt. Kurt has talked to no one, even though she knows he just talked to Cali Dewitt the previous day. Kurt's in Capitol Hill eating Jack in the Box, probably has met up with Caitlin, and of course this is speculation, but I assume he's probably scored some dope. He also runs into Charles Peterson in front of Linda's Tavern this same day in Capitol Hill.
The last time I saw Kurt was on the street, Capitol Hill, outside of Linda's Tavern. He wasn't looking so good, but it was nice to see him. He gave me his new phone number, and I think he was out looking to score.
And this is what really bothers me about April 3rd more than any other day. Charles Peterson was somewhat of a well-known photographer. He put a face to grunge. You've probably seen quite a bit of his photographs. He photographed a lot of the bands like Tad, Mudhoney, Nirvana, all these bands coming out of Tacoma, Seattle, Olympia. He put a face to grunge. And he is a part of Kurt's inner circle. So is Caitlin, his drug dealer, is a part of Kurt's inner circle. This is why April 3rd, 1994 really troubles me and makes me suspicious of Courtney Love. She tells Tom Grant and later the world that everybody knows Kurt is suicidal. Everybody thinks he's going to kill himself. On April 3rd, Kurt runs into, we know for certain he runs into Charles Peterson. Kurt even offers Peterson his new phone number. He says, here's my new phone number, let's hang out sometime. Does that sound like something somebody who's getting ready to kill themselves would do? Hey, here's my new number, give me a call next week. This is why it troubles me. Caitlin and Charles were both part of the inner circle, and they had never heard anything about Kurt being suicidal. If they had heard something about it, had Courtney put this out to the media, then Charles would have probably said, hey man, you know you're on the news, right? Your wife's telling people you're suicidal. Let's get you to a hospital. Let's get you some help. Contrary to popular belief, Courtney Love did not go public and say that Kurt was missing or that he was suicidal publicly until after his death. She never did it until after his death because if he was still alive, then he could contradict what she's saying.
Now at the time, the word suicide was never used by the media, by Courtney, by Kurt. It was portrayed as an accidental drug overdose.
He recovered from the coma, and his publicist said the incident was an accident, not a suicide attempt.
As soon as Kurt died, first interviews that Courtney gave, she started talking about previous suicide attempts. Rome was a suicide attempt. Courtney started telling people that Kurt had swallowed 60 pills. So we decided to contact the doctor that treated Kurt in Rome, Dr. Galetta, and he categorically denied that there were 60 pills in his stomach and that it was a suicide attempt. At the time, Kurt and Courtney both said it was an accident, and the doctor confirmed that. And so there's just no evidence that he'd ever tried to kill himself before. No anecdotal evidence. Nobody else close to Kurt ever said that he tried to commit suicide, but the world just took Courtney's word for it.
You find me a publication, a mainstream publication where Courtney Love is either on video or quoted as saying he's suicidal, that is dated before April the 3rd, and I will fly to wherever you live and kiss your ass. I've looked at all the news publications from all over the world. They're all dated April 8th or beyond. Now, yeah, she told Tom Grant prior to his death, and I believe there was a couple other people that she was friends with that she said these things to, but I'm talking publicly, out in the open to the media. That shit never happened until after Kurt was dead. Now, had she done that, perhaps Caitlin, perhaps Charles Peterson would have attempted to help him. My question is, why didn't she? I wish to hell she would have. We all know damn well that Courtney Love has no problem with putting her business out for the whole world to hear, airing her dirty laundry, but you're telling me when it comes to life or death of your own spouse, you keep it a secret among a couple friends and the police? What's up with the secrecy? She couldn't say it publicly because had Kurt been alive to rebuff it, she would have looked like a damn fool and everybody would have been suspicious of her. There is one more sighting on April 3rd. I'm not going to talk about it. I'll tell you where it was, the Cactus Restaurant. I don't think he was there, but you can check it out online if you just want to see it. I think it's unconfirmed. I think it's BS, just some people wanting their 15 minutes of fame. And as we know, 48 hours later, he's gone. According to the medical examiner, Dr. Hartshorn, who we're going to talk about in the very next video. Now, there is something else I want to address before we end this. A lot of you are going to tell me, yeah, but we get it that Kurt wasn't talking to Courtney and he wanted to go use heroin and whatever, but there were other people that he was still cool with that he just all of a sudden quit calling. Specifically, Michael Stipe of REM. Mark Lanigan of the Screaming Trees, and Roddy Bottum, his good buddy from Faith No More. Well, we can never know what was going on in Kurt's head. None of us can ever know that. But I came up with the question, I asked myself, if I were an addict and I just ran away from a rehab, how would I feel? I would want to relapse, right? So I started researching addicts and relapse and all that stuff. And I found out that two of the biggest emotional signs of relapse, isolation and not talking to people, not talking to those who care about you. He wanted to postpone those conversations. He was ashamed of himself. These people cared about him. They were his friends. They wanted to see him clean. He wanted to go use. Of course he's not going to call them. He doesn't want that guilt trip. He doesn't want to upset them. He doesn't want to feel that he's let them down. He's going to postpone that. That isolation, that not calling anybody, that's actually normal behavior for an addict who has relapsed. You can read about it yourself online. 70 to 90% of opiate addicts do relapse. They at least slip up once. And 60% of addicts who eventually do quit, usually on average, relapse about 7 times before they quit. His behavior was completely normal for the situation he was going through. If you made it this far in the video, I hope that I piqued your interest. I hope that I raised a couple questions in your mind. I'd love to hear your comments about this particular timeline. Know that the next video will go over the same timeline, only from the 2nd all the way to the 8th, and we'll be talking about Courtney Love, Tom Grant, Cali, Dewitt, Jessica Hopper. I really wanted to just fit everybody into one video, but it would have just been way too long. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. Hit me up on Instagram.